Coming up on today's edition of Locked On Eagles, it's our second episode for Super Bowl week. Eagles-Chiefs this Sunday. If it's a shootout with Patrick Mahomes, is Jalen Hurts ready for that kind of battle? Also, if Jalen Hurts wasn't to win Super Bowl MVP in the scenario the Eagles win the championship, who would win MVP? All that and more on this Tuesday edition of Locked On Eagles.
You are Locked On Eagles, your daily Philadelphia Eagles podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
We thank you so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. I'm Louis DiBiase. He's Gino Camilleri. This episode of Locked On Eagles is brought to you by Nissan. The only thing more exciting than the big game is the all-new, all-electric 2023 Nissan Ariya. There's only 5 days left until the Super Bowl. Are you ready? The Nissan Ariya, the EV for people who love to drive. Learn more at nissanusa.com. Gino, we had Media Day last night. Jalen Hurts, Haason Reddick, Nick Sirianni, Jason Kelce, Fletcher Cox, Brandon Graham, everybody at the podium, getting some pretty ridiculous questions for sure. It was cool, though, to see everybody. I love that aesthetic of seeing them all in the Media Day jackets. Definitely fun. We're getting close, man. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and that's it for shows until Super Bowl 57.
It's surreal how far and how long ago this journey had started. I mean, this started back in free agency. We're talking about getting Haason Reddick, and he's one of the most integral parts of this team. And then the journey to get AJ Brown and the journey to just continue to add bodies throughout the year. And now you're sitting here with 22 out of 22 starters ready to go. You get to see all these guys' personality last night. It was cool to see Jordan Mailata have the fat Batman picture of Jason Kelce as his background on his phone screen. And who was it? Jalen Hurts saying that he would have Will Smith play him in a movie. So questions like that are pretty cool. But you know that at the end of the day, the guys just want to get through it. They want to get to Sunday.
Especially this team, man.
Yeah, absolutely. They're all about that action and that business. They're sick of the rat poison, as Jalen and Nick Saban
Absolutely. And speaking of Jalen Hurts, I saw him on the stage yesterday with Patrick Mahomes, and that still also feels surreal to see them, a year later. We've mentioned this game so much because it really was a measuring stick moment for me. Chiefs Bills last year in the playoffs. I saw Mahomes and Allen in this historic quarterback battle, and I think back to the first Super Bowl the Eagles won between Nick Foles and Tom Brady. I mean, Nick Foles outduels the greatest player in maybe all of sports ever, who threw for 500 yards that day. And Nick Foles outduels him with a 41-38 win, or 41-33. And, I always look at those two moments and I'm like, is Jalen Hurts ready? Can he be that quarterback eventually where, if that's the scenario, he can get us through it? And to see just one calendar year later, he's playing one of those quarterbacks that I felt like he couldn't be is awesome. And I really do think if that is the type of battle, I don't think it's going to be, but let's say it is a Foles, Brady, Mahomes, Allen type of shootout, I'm pretty confident that the Eagles can still win that kind of game. And I would have said 0% chance last year.
You would have to believe so, right? Because look at how far they've come from that game where they couldn't really even do anything on offense against a defense that...
Exactly.
Yeah, the Bucs had a good defense, but they weren't world beaters like they were 2 years ago. They were a middle-of-the-road defense, and now you're saying, can you compete with a top offense, to where you're saying, yeah, that's what we had expected all year long, that we wanted to get into this paradigm that it's a throw-first type of league and take care of the rest. And Jalen Hurts, he's been throwing the ball unbelievable this season. What he's been able to do from his first year in college. You had posted on Twitter the national championship comeback drive where he goes down the field, calm, cool, and collected with 2 minutes left, takes the lead over Clemson. Unfortunately, Clemson goes down the field and scores with Deshaun Watson. But Jalen Hurts has never been a guy to shy away from these moments. And in the way that he's done it, it's had to come through running the football. It's had to come through throwing the football. And we're going to really see, can you throw for volume like they wanted to in that Chiefs game last year? That was, I believe, the most amount of attempts that he had in his career.
And it was by far the best passing performance he had last year, Gino, was against this Chiefs team. And he had a makeshift offensive line in that game, and he still looked really good. So, yeah, that's the thing, is obviously you don't want to need Jalen Hurts to throw 40 times in this football game, and it's a shootout back and forth because your defense can't get a stop, and you don't want to have to play from behind and feel like you can't run the football because they run the football at an elite historic level. You need that as a part of this formula on Sunday. But at the same time, I do feel like if you need to throw the ball, and you're going to want to, this Chiefs defense is not the same as San Francisco, 2 weeks ago. I feel like Hurts can do it. And I know he hasn't thrown much over the last month, the shoulder injury. He didn't look great against the 49ers. But remember, the elements are on the passing game side. They're indoors. The weather, it's been cold in Philadelphia over the last month. And they also really didn't need to throw much over the last month to win these games. So I feel like it was hard for Jalen to really get in a rhythm on top of the shoulder. So I feel like even though the last month they haven't had those Steelers, Vikings, Commanders, Titans type of passing dominant performances, I still think they have that switch with both sides of the offense that if they want to do either to win, I still think they can do it.
Well, Lou, I mean, if you believed in Jalen throwing 48 times, which he did against Kansas City, when his top receivers outside of Devontae Smith were Jalen Reagor and Quez Watkins, who were 2A, 2B at that point, do you feel better with going into this game as A.J. Brown as your number 2 in this passing output? Yeah, I absolutely do. And what he has done and how far he has come from that Kansas City game, which was week 4 last year, you're talking about a year and a half or so for him to continue to evolve. And he's not even the same thrower that he was last year. The throws that he would be willing to make, he would second guess them and say, yeah, maybe I should make a better throw. Maybe I shouldn't throw this ball into tight coverage. But at the same time, he's still aggressive. He's still one of the more aggressive quarterbacks in the sport when it comes to throwing the football. So if you have to say which one of these NFC quarterbacks could have thrown that volume against Pat Mahomes, what other of the 6 are you going to pick? I mean, you're not picking Kirk Cousins. You're not picking Daniel Jones. You're not picking Brock Purdy. I don't care what anybody says. Jalen Hurts is the perfect, compliment to go at Patrick Mahomes, because if you need to run and keep the ball out of his hand, you can. But at the same time, if you got a battle from behind, you're down, let's say 14 points at some point in this game.
Right.
I know what the Eagles can do with their explosive plays in the air. I fully expect them to be able to hit on a couple of those.
Well, in Gino, it's not just the passing game, but even in a shootout scenario, you look at the Green Bay Packers game on Sunday night, the Eagles won that shootout against a star back-to-back MVP quarterback, and Jalen Hurts threw the ball really well in that game. But honestly, most of their explosive plays came from a 400-yard rushing performance between Jalen, Miles Sanders, Kenneth Gainwell, and Boston Scott. So I think, as much as I'm confident this team can and will throw the football way better than they have the last month on Sunday, at the same time, this run game is the most explosive. It's not just a power style, no explosive plays. Just, they do have their 9-minute, soul crushing drives, but Miles Sanders has been one of the best home run hitting running backs in the league. And Jalen Hurts is one of the best scrambling quarterbacks in the NFL. So overall, their entire offense, I feel like, is truly ready for that type of output in a game against one of the greatest quarterbacks that we've ever seen. Hopefully, though, the defense plays a lot better than that type of game would present itself, like Super Bowl 52 did. And I feel confident that this defense is much more equipped to handle Mahomes than the 2017 defense was against Tom Brady. Gino, speaking of some other players that are going to be crucial to winning Super Bowl 57 for the Birds, outside of Jalen Hurts, I want to pose the question coming up next right here on Locked On Eagles. If the Eagles win it all on Sunday, and Jalen Hurts is not the Super Bowl MVP, who would it be? That's coming up. All that and more on this Tuesday edition of Locked On Eagles. And guys, it is presented by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is daily fantasy made easy. We got one last game to make some money in the NFL, but you can also bet on college football when it's back, men's college basketball, the NBA, NHL, MLB, women's sports like WNBA. We've got women's college basketball, esports, cricket, all that and more. Here's how Prize Picks works. You pick 2 to 6 players, and if they're going to score more or less than their Prize Picks projection, you can win up to 25 times your money on any entry. No competing against other people. It's just you versus the projection available. Entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. It's that easy, safe, and fast withdrawals as well. Currently operational in over 30 states in Canada. Download the PrizePicks app or go to prizepicks.com to sign up and play daily fantasy sports. Hammer that over on Jalen Hurts passing yards. And A.J. Brown, I think, is finally going to have his huge game in the playoffs when it matters most in the Super Bowl. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with the promo code LOCKEDON. So if you deposit $100, PrizePicks will give you $100. If you deposit $50, they're going to give you $50. Don't forget to enter that promo code LOCKEDON at sign up for an instant deposit match up to $100. We thank you so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. I'm Louis DiBiase. He's Gino Camilleri. It's Super Bowl week, episode 2. We still got a show for you Wednesday. Thursday's the crossover with Locked On Chiefs. Friday show as well. And Gino, we're kind of just getting ready for what this game could present, talking about if Hurts is ready for a potential shootout with Patrick Mahomes. And at the same time, I feel like he's not going to have to do it all, right, to win this game. The Eagles have, I think, the best roster they've ever constructed in franchise history. So you're going to need Miles Sanders and Dallas Goedert, Devontae and AJ and this offensive line and the entire defense. And speaking of those other players, let's say the Eagles do win this game, but Jalen Hurts isn't the MVP, right? There are still those Super Bowls where the quarterback may have a great game, but, you know, Julian Edelman wins it all, or who else is one? I mean, Malcolm Smith won it one time, a linebacker for Seattle, and, you know, the list goes on and on. Did Cooper Kupp win it last year, I think, for the Rams? If I'm not mistaken, I think he won it over Matt Stafford. I can't remember, but so the question is, Gino, if Hurts doesn't win it, but the Eagles win the Super Bowl, who would you say could win that MVP award?
Well, I'm somebody who likes to take the long shot. And the good thing is, over at FanDuel Sportsbook, there's some pretty good odds for Eagles, Lou. And I'm not just talking about the big names. I'm talking you could get some guys like Devontae Smith at plus 3,100 to win MVP. I think that's pretty good value on a guy who, if it's not AJ having that passing output, it's going to be Devontae Smith. Dallas Goedert, he's at plus 6,000. Travis Kelce's at plus 1,600. So if you're going to try and find some value, I would rather sit on Goedert at that tight end position than Travis Kelce. Personally, I have to be on the right side of history for this one again. I went with Corey Clement the last time at plus 3,000, which was insane why his odds were so low.
Did you actually bet that before the Super Bowl?
Yes, 100%.
Wow, because he would have won it if it was if Nick Foles didn't win it. Clement was the next guy.
And if he scored that touchdown where he cut the opposite way, he probably would have.
I had no idea you bet that before the game.
Plus 3,000. Yep. Man. So if you want to go for like one of those underrated guys who, I mean, Kenny Gainwell, the way he's been playing, man, he could really be that one guy where Kansas City just doesn't have a game plan for him. Like you take Miles Sanders out of the equation, you end up getting one of the two wide receivers, and then Kenny just comes in and he's a real threat. Kenny Gainwell plus 13,000 right now. Sprinkle a couple bucks here and there, but if I had to go defensively, Lou, I think you have to go with Haason Reddick plus 3,400 on FanDuel. If he's going to be the guy that ruins the game, it's going to be 2.5 sack outing, 2.5, 3 tackles for loss, probably a forced fumble. That's MVP winning play right there. I mean, you talk about what the defensive players that have won MVP have had to do. It's a big time change of possession, have dominated the line of scrimmage, have multiple sacks. Yep, exactly. Multiple sacks in that game. Haason Reddick, I mean, I don't see him slowing down, Lou, against this offensive line. No. I don't see it because you look at last week against the Niners, who have far better tackles, in my opinion, than what they – I mean, Orlando Brown is a very good player, don't get me wrong, but Trent is top of the list, and Mike McGlinchey, he's a top 10 guy at right tackle as well. Haason Reddick could blow things up on the edge because the interior Kansas City, it's a lot better than their two tackles.
Haason Reddick's been, Gino, the best. I think outside of quarterback, he might have been the best player in the playoffs in the entire league. So I agree. I think, and I posed this question on Twitter, most of our listeners agree that if it's not Jalen Hurts, it's probably Haason Reddick. And it makes sense. I think if you were going to bet on somebody, it would probably be a running back to me or an edge rusher, because if Devontae Smith is going to have a huge game, or if A.J. Brown's going to have a big game, or Dallas Goedert, that probably means that Jalen Hurts had a really good passing performance. And we know that these awards lean heavy quarterback. Even these, Von Millers and Edelmans and Malcolm Smiths, for the most part, quarterbacks win this award. So I would say it's off the back of the run game, and you could say Miles Sanders or Kenny Gainwell. If not, it would be the defensive player that makes the big play, right? Like a
Right.
Brandon Graham, Haason Reddick, maybe Javon Hargrave as a 3-sack performance like he did, multiple times this year. I think it would be probably a defensive lineman or running back. Kenneth Gainwell is the interesting one. You're not the first one I've heard mention that this is like the best bang for your buck. And I think people are feeling that Corey Clement vibe. He's led the Eagles in rushing this playoffs. It's been incredible how good Kenny G's been, especially considering I think he's been having a down year so far in his second year. Man. I thought I was ready for him to blow up, and you're seeing that finally in the postseason.
I think Jalen Hurts had mentioned it the other day that he was asked one player that's really stepped it up in this playoff period, and they said he said Kenny Gainwell. Sure. I'll trust the word of Jalen Hurts. If he says Kenny is working, that's the thing, Lou. I'm going bang for your buck, like plus 13,000. You put $10 on that, you can win over.
Yeah, if you're not going to bet on a quarterback, you might as well go all out.
And you're not getting your value with the quarterbacks. It's Pat Mahomes and Jalen Hurts at plus 130. I mean, that's a standard bet. You're going to split either one. It's like picking the winner or loser of a game. I mean, Miles Sanders plus 2,500, AJ Brown plus 1,800. Even with those, you're still getting over plus 1,000 on that. So, I mean, I'm with you all day long. That look outside of those standard avenues if this is something that you want to bet. But at the same time, history does repeat itself. So if it is going to be somebody outside of the quarterback position, look at what it took. These outlier games for wide receivers and Julian Edelman and these crazy defensive performances from Von Miller and Malcolm Smith. That's what it's going to have to take. And who do you believe could do that? Haason Reddick. I mean, Brandon Graham, his last game ever as a Philadelphia Eagle. You never know. He could make maybe one of the best plays in his career to cap things off, or Fletcher Cox. And who is going to be the hero, Lou? That's what makes the Super Bowl great, to where you're saying Malcolm Smith was the MVP.
But that's the thing, man, is that the best part about it. Improbable a lot of the time, but this has happened so often in the Super Bowl where this guy comes out of nowhere to become a hero. I mean, Corey Clement is just one example.
Who's the receiver for Seattle?
That's who I was just thinking of, man. I can't remember who this. He dominated in the first half in 2014 against the Patriots, and that's what I'm saying. I can't remember. Look up the roster for Seattle.
Chris Matthews.
Chris Matthews. That's right. Chris Matthews had a massive first half for Seattle. Malcolm Smith won it. I mean, you look at just so many players. Who was the Jermaine Kearse for the Seahawks? If they win that game, I mean, that catch is seen as one of the greatest in Super Bowl history. David Tyree, I mean, the list goes on and on. So I think it's very feasible that a Kenny Gainwell could win MVP. Or if we're going to take the actual Corey Clement route, that means it's your third running back. Boston Scott, maybe? What are his odds? And I mean, maybe hammer those.
Boston Scott plus 15,000.
Yeah.
So he's plus 2,000 more than Kenny Gainwell.
Maybe I'll throw a Boston Scott bet on.
Fletcher Cox plus 18,000 is crazy to me.
Ooh, okay.
Crazy to me.
Man, there's some good ones. Maybe I'll just throw a couple on there just to
like
see.
This could be Fletcher Cox's last game, and he has an all-time performance. He wins the MVP, rides off into the sunset, and we could be sitting here on Monday and say, yeah, I believe that happened. That's something that very well could happen. And
I think
you got to just be in it to win it. That's what I'll say. Like, take chances. That's why I took the chance on Corey. I'm like, this guy's been playing out of his mind in the last stretch.
What a crazy payout that would have been.
Oh, dude, if he cut back the other way on that run and the catch he had, Lou, that you talk about the moment, that's the moment right there. That catch in quintuple coverage at that point. Yeah. In the back of the end zone, by the sliver, holds on to that ball.
Yeah.
That's what we're talking. Like, it's those moments where you remember. Like, those are usually the guys who win the MVP.
Right. Absolutely. It'll be super fun to see what happens Sunday. I would put my money on, Hurts or Mahomes winning it if I had to predict. But I think, there is a chance that, bet on Kenny Gainwell, Boston Scott. It's happened. Crazier things have happened in the Super Bowl for sure. Gino, coming up next, we're going to wrap up the show. I know we talked about in segment 1 how we're confident the Eagles can throw the football on Sunday. But at the same time, this team got to this game because they also ran the football at a historic level. So I want to get into that a little bit more. Coming up next on this Tuesday edition of Locked On Eagles.
To make sure that you're all fueled up for the trenches this weekend and you're fueled up for all your friends coming over for Super Bowl Sunday, you gotta make sure you have the best dessert on the planet. People will love this if you just have a Super Bowl party, have a box of them on the table. I'm talking about Built Bars. I'm telling you, everybody loves these. My mom loves them. My grandma loves them. My niece and nephews love them. These things are delicious, and there's a reason why. They're like candy. It's 100% real chocolate, but it doesn't taste like that chalky, gross taste you get from the bars at the gas station or your Dollar Tree. No, these are delicious. They come in churro, peanut butter brownie, coconut almond, plenty of other flavors. They have flavors that only go on for a short period of time. They have their classics, and they're not going anywhere. Not only can you get them at built.com, you could go to Sam's Club or Walmart today. At Walmart, you could get a 4-bar box of cookies and cream, double chocolate, or coconut puffs. At Sam's Club, you can grab a 13-bar box of brownie batter or churro. Please go get these things for this weekend. You will not regret it. Only 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, and a whopping 17 grams of protein. I'm sure guys like Jordan Mailata and Jason Kelsey will be having one of these between reps on the sideline. So go to built.com today, get your Built Bar, and check out whatever flavor that you prefer. You know, I love the peanut butter brownie. Lou, he's got his weird flavor palette, so
yeah, white chocolate's my go-to.
Oh, that's right. But go to built.com today. You won't regret it.
This is the Locked On Eagles podcast. Louis DiBiase and Gino Camilleri, episode 2 of 5 on Super Bowl week. Make sure you subscribe wherever you get the show, on YouTube as well and on Twitter. So, Gino, we talked in the first segment how I feel like the Eagles, you know, you're indoors. You have A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert, the best pass-protecting offensive line in football, an MVP finalist, a quarterback. The Chiefs' defense not nearly as good, I think, you know, than San Francisco. I think all of this lines up for them to have a successful day throwing the ball. And they really haven't had that big passing performance since, I don't know, the last time they played the Giants, that stretch where they were just dominating New York and Tennessee. And that entire month they were going nuclear through the air. And I think they can do it again Sunday. And I think they will. I think they'll be a very balanced attack. But at the same time, man, I know I missed their pass, and we just hit on all these points about the pass today, but run the damn ball on Sunday. Look, I wanted them to pass the football this year because I feel like that's how you consistently win games. You can't be a one-trick pony that can only run. Look at a team like the Baltimore Ravens. It only gets you to a certain floor of winning. But at the same time, you're in the Super Bowl now. Do what it takes to win the game. It doesn't matter how you win this game. Winning a Super Bowl is winning a Super Bowl. And this run game is so hot right now. It's so explosive. Just ride what got you there. And I think that they're just too good at running the football. And like we mentioned earlier, they do it with explosive plays, with grinding drives. Just still feature the, you know, run the damn ball, man. I need a t-shirt of that for this week.
Oh, yeah. We have hats at the high school that I coach at that has the yellow font that says "Run the damn ball" because that's all we do. I think we throw like 3 or 4 times a game, and we run it about 60 or 70. So we're all about that, and that's the thing, Lou. Not just are you running the ball to run the ball, but you're doing it for a multitude of different reasons that have benefits in this game. One, it's arguably the strongest part of your offense. I mean,
it is.
Your quarterback can do it. You have 3 guys that can do it in the backfield, all pretty similar levels, I would say.
And the greatest offensive line in the league.
Yeah, and the offensive line makes it really good for you. Kansas City, Lou, 15th in DVOA against the run, where San Francisco last week, they were number 2. So if you were able to run the ball against San Francisco, you should like your odds of getting to run the ball against the Kansas City Chiefs. And at the end of the day, like you said, Lou, reason number 3, just keep the ball out of Pat Mahomes' hands. Like that, that might be the biggest reason. Don't allow him to go through. You go 3 and out after they just scored a touchdown because you passed it 3 times. You don't pick any first downs up and they go back and they take a 2-score lead. No, if you have a chance to have one of those 9, 10, 11 play drives, that's maybe 1 to 2 less possessions for Pat Mahomes to have in this game. And that's the biggest thing. Do not let the guy on the opposite side force you to have to throw it that much, because that's what Super Bowl 52 was. You had to throw. There was no other option. You had to chuck that thing. You're in a game that scored 80 points. There was,
but, you know, at the same time, where would you be without your running backs in that game? Where would you be without Jay Ajayi averaging like 9 yards a touch, LeGarrette Blount's big runs, Corey Clement's 100 yards through the air? And that's the thing. They're going to need everything in this game. They're going to have to earn this one to beat the Chiefs. Just don't get cute. Obviously, throw the ball when you need to, run the ball when you need to. I just, you know, I look at that Seattle Seahawks, that second Super Bowl, and I think they wanted so bad to have their quarterback be the hero instead of just having Marshawn Lynch run the football. And trust me, again, I am Mr. Pass, Mr. Quarterback that wants my quarterback leading the team. But your quarterback is one of the greatest runners this league has ever seen at the position. So do what got you there. And because again, winning a championship, there's no flukiness about this team. Just get the ring at this point. You know what I mean? Do it any way you have to. And I think running the ball is going to be a massive part of that, as it always has been for this team.
And the thing about that
empty the bag. Yep.
Yes, designing a pass offense, you could get very, very intricate in how you go about things. But the guy designing your run game, Jeff Stoutland, Lou, there was a play last week. I know it wasn't during the run, but it was in pass protection where Nick Bosa's lined up right over Jalen Hurts, right? And I believe they had a running back lined up to that side. What they do, Nick Bosa goes on a stunt to go inside of the tackle. What they do is Lane Johnson is mirroring Nick Bosa. The running back, I don't remember who it is, comes up and chips Nick Bosa. Nick Bosa does his stunt, comes into the gap that would be where the guard is, and look who's right there. It's Lane Johnson. That's an incredibly well-designed play. And the guy designing those plays, the guy designing your pass protection, the guy designing your run scheme, your run game coordinator might be the best coach in football,
that's the
regardless
thing,
of position.
It's one of the most creative, talented, well-coached. This isn't your typical running game that you just got to use because you got nothing else. This is one of the greatest rushing attacks in this 2-year stretch the Eagles have had. It's one of the greatest, not just the Eagles have ever seen, but the NFL has ever seen. And there's no shame in having that lead you to a championship because, again, you did pass the football this year to get you there as well. Both things happened. There's no fluke about this. And just do what's going to get the W. And I think running the ball is going to be so important. But we'll continue to dive into the deeper parts of these matchups. We've got tomorrow's show, and then we've got the crossover with the guys over at Locked On Chiefs. So we're going to dive into the X's and O's even more. Everybody make sure you subscribe to Locked On Eagles on all podcast platforms, 5 shows a week, YouTube as well, and on Twitter. We're always talking birds at Locked On Birds, at GC24_football, and at DiBiase LOE. As always, thank you for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. Make sure you also subscribe to the Locked On NFL podcast and get daily conversations on the biggest NFL stories, plus in-depth analysis on the biggest games with NFL key predictions, and Monday local insiders cover the weekend with game-to-game episodes during the season. Locked On NFL, available wherever you get Locked On Eagles. For Gino Camilleri, I'm Louis DiBiase signing off. We'll see you tomorrow. As always, thank you for downloading. Thank you for watching and listening, and let's go Birds.
Fly, Eagles, fly.